Across the ring, on my left, fighting out of the blue corner, wearing green trunks, purple and white trim, hailing from Baltimore, Maryland. He weighed in at 135 pounds. He all pound for pound, great.
He weighed in at 227.2 pounds. He holds a near perfect professional record of 10 victories, opposite just 1 defeat, with 7 of those wins coming by way of knockout.
For someone
it's just wild to see after how that first round went.
Nice left hook
to the right hand. Do not slip to your left on the jab.
It's just a matter of time. He's getting broke down.
Whoa.
That's a good hook he landed on. Oh.
Overhand right.
A minute 15 seconds away from the midpoint of this fight, and now Davis trying to walk.
The 2025 fight between Jake Paul and Gervonta "Tank" Davis was total madness from start to finish. The undefeated knockout artist went head-to-head with the internet's biggest villain, and what followed was wild, brutal, and unforgettable. Did Jake Paul really pull off the impossible, or did Tank Davis destroy him in the most violent way possible? On paper, this matchup made no sense. A cruiserweight walking around at over 200 pounds against a lightweight champion whose legacy was built at 135. The size gap alone made regulators in Atlanta cancel the original deal, calling it too risky. But boxing isn't built on logic, it's built on spectacle. That's why the fight landed in Miami at the Casa Center, a city that thrives on chaos and entertainment. What was supposed to be a mismatch turned into one of the biggest global events in combat sports history. Netflix jumped in, turning it into a spectacle that felt like the Super Bowl of boxing. Millions watched, not just for punches, but to witness what happens when a YouTuber-turned-fighter faces one of the sport's deadliest knockout machines. This wasn't about belts or rankings. It was about making history. Jake Paul entered the ring with size, reach, and power on his side. He was taller, heavier, and built like a tank himself. But he wasn't the natural-born fighter. He was the outsider who forced his way into boxing's biggest stages. Tank Davis, on the other hand, was pure skill and power. 24 wins, 23 by knockout, undefeated across 3 divisions. This was hype versus precision. The rivalry didn't just appear overnight either. It started years earlier when Jake called out Canelo Alvarez, and Tank clapped back, saying he'd beat the brakes off Jake. Jake mocked his height, turned it into a viral moment, and used his following to fuel the fire. The more fighters dismissed him, the more his fans rallied behind him, pressuring real boxers like Tank to finally shut him up. Things exploded after Jake shocked the world by beating Mike Tyson. Yes, Tyson was 58 and far from his prime, but a win over that name changed everything. Critics called it a joke, a robbery, even an insult to the sport. But Jake didn't care. He turned every headline, insult, and comment into promotion. Fighters like Colby Covington, Clarissa Shields, Francis Ngannou, and Andre Ward all took shots at him, but Jake used it all as fuel. Love him or hate him, he forced boxing to talk about him. Meanwhile, Gervonta Davis needed no hype to prove his worth. He was already a star. Born in Baltimore, raised in tough streets, and built through hard fights, Tank was a symbol of power and discipline. Atlanta adopted him as their own, and every fight became a highlight reel knockout. He didn't throw flurries, he waited, calculated, and landed bombs. His 135-pound power was terrifying. Most of his opponents didn't make it past the halfway mark. Heading into the fight, the boxing world believed Jake was finally stepping into a trap. Sure, Jake had beaten MMA names and retired legends, but Tank was in his prime, fast, ruthless, and carrying a 95% knockout rate. This wasn't supposed to be close. It was supposed to be a reality check. Jake was the loudmouth promoter with millions of followers. Tank was the quiet destroyer whose fists spoke louder than any press conference. One represented fame, the other legacy. When they met, it wasn't just a fight, it was a collision of 2 worlds. By fight night, nobody cared about the weight difference or the hype. The only question was, could Jake Paul survive Tank's punches, or would Tank do what he always does, turn off the lights? Fight week in Miami was pure chaos. Netflix turned the build-up into a full-blown media circus. Billboards, countdowns, non-stop coverage, it was everywhere. Press conferences were wild. Jake played his usual role as the villain, mocking Tank's height and clowning around in front of the cameras. Tank barely reacted, just stared at him and said, "I'm putting you in a body bag." The crowd lost it. Every face-off felt like a storm ready to break. By then, the world wasn't just watching, they were holding their breath. And when the dust settled, one thing was clear. Jake Paul had taken boxing where no YouTuber ever had. Now the only question left is, who's crazy enough to step up next?